What are the invisible barriers to not only participating in trials, but what are the barriers to participating in co-design that really need to be dismantled to make it really inclusive?
Well, I'll list a few and then Mindy can put some life behind them. But in our study, three things really stood out. One, that would, what needed to be done to encourage people to take part. An explanation of the process. This gets to, and so I saw a comment on the Q&A. Somebody said, is plain language important? Yes, it's got to be written. So it's for any and all patients and their caregivers. So you need to do that. Flexible scheduling. Get back to what's practical. Can people have lives to live? They have kids to get to school. They have all the stuff that they're trying to do. You have to make it so it can work. Can it work remotely? Can it work on their own time frame? Because people won't be able to participate if it doesn't fit into their schedule. And then one of my favorites, compensation for their time. In market research, nobody questions that. We pay people for their time, and it's wonderful. And clinical and such, oh, will bias the result. I don't think so. I think you need to reward people. They're spending time. You're not going to, so many people have given up so much to take care of a rare patient, a loved one, in terms of giving up a job and giving up where they live. Can't you compensate them for a little bit of their time? So those are some barriers that came out here that I sincerely believe, and these can be overcome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that compensation point is really important. I think we have to remember that the compensation is very is very fair. Nobody's retiring or swanning off to the Bahamas on the compensation that they get from taking part in co-design or market research. So I think the pushback against compensation is seems to be quite unjust, I think. And I think, like you say, people deserve to be compensated for their time. Mindy, how about you? What do you kind of in your experience with your community, what are the biggest barriers?
Well, scheduling is a big one, but I think there's always a way. We're in a digital world now. It's so easy to spend an hour, virtually with someone, and whether you're doing one-on-one patient engagement or whether you're talking to like a focus group. I think feedback about how your input was used or wasn't used is important, making sure patients understand. I do work with a company, it's a digital health company that is extremely good about letting their patient advocates know what impact it had on their product. This isn't, they don't do interventional drugs and therapies. This is more like technology products. But how that product is really going to be used by a patient in the real world, how they're going to put that on their phone. So I think that is something that could be looked at. I think I put one more thing on here. Oh, language. I don't want to say a bad word, diversity here, but if you're not looking at the broad range of your patients, where they're going to clinic, is there information available to them in their first language? This is hugely important too, and to me it seems like a relatively simple thing to do. But if you're not looking at your whole population, you may be missing very important pieces that may come back later, even post-approval, and cause big problems. So making sure that you are talking to not just, I don't want to say anything wrong here, but not just a certain group of people that maybe can have the resources to go to conferences and to take time off work to participate in your group. Maybe have to find childcare for that to participate. So make sure that you are enabling all types of patients, because if you're not and you miss something, what a drag. I mean, it's something you're going to have to go back and try to take care of later, which is going to be expensive. So,
And do you think, Mindy, that the advocacy groups are the first kind of port of call in understanding a community so that you can even get the design of the co-design right in the first place? Would that be your first point of call, or, where else should companies go to understand, okay, what would we need to, what would a co-design program or a co-design activity need to look like for this community?
I think that's challenging. I mean, we are lucky in that we have a lot of advocacy groups. Some people say we have too many in Duchenne, but we have a lot. We have one that's really focused just on payer issues. So we're lucky that sponsors will come across instances when there is no organized patient group. A lot of these diseases in rare, you may be developing the very first clinical trial this community's ever seen. So I've definitely worked with patients that don't have organized advocacy, and that is more challenging. A good tip is social media. Patients tend to find each other over time if they're not meeting at a conference once or twice a year. They do. Social media has changed the patient experience, and I think mostly for the better. You hear a lot of complaints about it, but it has been able to, it provides a connection that we've never had before. So that might be one place you could look. I do think that you can get a wealth of information from your patient advocacy groups, and they will be able to direct you. But there still is a need to go deeper than just talking to the patient advocacy groups. You've got to talk to people that are living with the condition every single day. And that's going to be through outreach, through clinics, trying to find as many different kinds of patients as you can. And not only like race and ethnicity, but like income. That's huge. Whether patients are going to be able to participate. Financial incentives can be very important. Financial incentives for people with disability can be problematic because we have all income limits too for people with disabilities. So if you come across a patient that says, I can't accept payment, that's acceptable. Find another way for them to participate or another way to compensate them. Because you will run into that. We are bound by income limits in this country too. So,
great. And what do you think? What does success look like? What would a successful co-design experience feel like or look like from that patient point of view? What would be the things that they would say afterwards if they felt that had been really meaningful?
well, things that I know we might see from a sponsor's point is quicker enrollment, faster enrollment. That's key. Some of the things that we talked about earlier are really incentivizing patients to participate. I love this idea of pragmatic trial design, really looking at what a patient is going to have to do in their clinical care side and structuring a trial that mirrors that. That way we can start thinking about how we're going to alleviate burden on patients. I mean, the number one reason patients don't participate in clinical trials is they're hard and they take a lot of time. So if we can arrive at a consensus on how we can share enough data during a clinical trial that it's alleviating burden on the care and the trial side, that would be a huge measure of success. And we are starting to see that. Patients are starting to get savvy about that. They're starting to say, okay, I'll participate if you share certain results with my care team, because otherwise I don't want to do that test twice. I don't want to come in and have to do it again and again and again. When you're collecting the data, blood work's another great example. Drawing blood off little kids is hard. They hate it. It's stressful. It's upsetting. They start fearing doctors. They start not wanting to participate in further research. And the only way we're ever going to get cures, I'm going to say the word cures. The only way we're going to get really effective treatments and cures is if people participate in trials. So let's start making it easier for patients to do that. That would be a huge success in my book. Really thinking about a patient's day and a patient's life and incorporating parts of studies that alleviate some of the burden.
Yeah. And you've kind of already mentioned a bit of this, but Wes, from your point of view, how can we make sure that co-design does reflect the voices of all communities, not just the loudest ones? And I know Mindy's talked a little bit there about things like translation.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's so important. I think like I'll use Mindy as an example, right? A pharma company loves Mindy. Mindy is educated. She's well-spoken. She knows her things. They would love to deal with people like that. And that's great and that's important. And I'm glad they do. But as Mindy said, what about everybody else? What about what I call the run, not in a derogatory way, but the run-of-the-mill patient, in the US, the person in rural Montana that's not involved in all this stuff. They need to include all those people because otherwise you're developing a solution for the elite, if you will, and that's not the bulk of the patient. So it is so important to do that, and just to the work that we do, that's what it's all about. We have patients all around, and you'll get the Mindys, but you'll get the other people too, that friends of a friend that might not even. We did a study years ago asking people about advocacy groups and how they could help and do things. And so many of our people have been recruited through advocacy groups, and half of them answered they didn't even know there was an advocacy group. So a lot of people aren't tuned in to that.
Mhm.
And you don't want to exclude that point of view. It's got to work for them too.
Mm. And what would you say, because we often hear this term, hard to reach, certain segments of patients are hard to reach. What would be your view on that, Wes?
Well, again, it's self-serving. That's our whole business. We've spent 12 years finding the hard to reach patients and caregivers and how, well, they're hard to reach. We go to where they are. We go, if they have a walk for lupus, we'll go to that. If there's a hemophilia conference, we'll go to that. And patients, no other patients, as Mindy said, with the internet, with the closed Facebook page for disease X or Y, they know each other. And we love to work with folks. We have a referral program where we compensate people for spreading the word and having them contact us to want to join. So there are ways to find things, and advocacy groups are wonderful. They're our key referral partners, but it goes beyond them. It goes to the individuals who know people, their genetic diseases where they can go to their family and extended family. So it's work, but you can't just do what comes easy. You have to. They're out there. A lot of them want to be found. They want to take part. So go out and find them.
And nothing will bring out patients like an approved therapy. So we find
Oh, yeah.
that we have a lot more patients that want to get involved once there is a treatment, because invariably they may run into an access challenge. Then they're going to reach out to, where can I get help? So we have definitely increased our hard to reach patient network by having approved therapies. I know that seems kind of backwards, but once
Yeah.
a therapy becomes available and people hear about it, whether it's through their doctor or through a Muscular Dystrophy Association ad or whatever, if you're seeing care, if you're getting care for your rare disease, you may be involved in some kind of network. And then once a treatment is approved, then you will get a lot more patients that want to participate and that are suddenly, research got us here. We have an approved therapy because of a clinical trial. I want to know more about that. What other clinical trials are out there? So a good marketing team will emphasize that their product is the result of robust research, well-developed patient advocacy, and hopefully that all trickles down and you get more patients interested in participation.
Mm. And again, you've touched on this, both touched on this a little bit but already, but in terms of the clinical trial planning and design, are there certain areas of it that are really crying out for insight? And I know we've talked there about endpoints and Wes, you talked to some of the stuff that came from your study, but in terms of whether it's protocols or consent forms, what are the things that, in your opinions, need the most work?
Well, my opinion, from what we've heard, I go to the protocols because the other things seem like, hey, if you don't have the endpoints, you can't get approved. Those are all crucial, but if you don't set it up right, people won't participate. And to set it up right, you're going to need to talk to people and find out what works and what doesn't work. So to me, it's back to the how we do it. And if we do it right, we'll get to the right answers. So to me, that's the key area to focus.
One thing that is, in addition to what Wes said, one thing that we are now needing a lot of patient involvement in is long-term follow-up studies. Whether it's a gene therapy or exon skipping therapy or whatever the therapy is that you're thinking about, especially in what I've experienced, is we are missing some pieces on how to keep patients engaged for the long haul. So we think there needs to be a lot more work on that.
Great. So, Mindy, if you could sort of sketch a blueprint for the ideal co-design partnership, what would be 3 things, say, that you would have to have included? How would that look for a company?
Start early. I think we've gone over that. I did get the advantage of having this question beforehand, so I have thought about this. So starting early was definitely one of them. Pragmatic design is another one. I am very into sharing and alleviating burden. We have to make it easier. People are, why won't my trial enroll? And then this is something that you hear about throughout the industry, slow enrollment of trials. It's because it's hard to do clinical trials. And until we alleviate some of that burden and we start listening to why patients don't participate, we're not going to solve it. It doesn't matter if it's a hard to reach patient group, you're just not going to enroll your trial if you don't make it easier. And then another big one for me is data return. Once a trial's over, making sure patients understand that their contribution mattered, that this drug may or may not have been as effective in your own self as it was in other trial participants. Patients, we're in the dawn of a time when even rare disease patients are going to have some therapeutic options. We need to know how we've done on a treatment so we can make decisions going forward about what kind of care we need, what kind of treatments we want to pursue, how much our insurance is going to pay. Do we have to pick? We have got to get our data back. It's time for us to do this. It's my soapbox. Data sharing and data return, they're kind of different in my opinion about when certain things happen during a trial. But those are that's my blueprint. Early engagement, pragmatic trial design that allows sharing of data, and then better long-term follow-up and result sharing.